The classic image of gladiators locked in brutal combat, fighting to the death for the entertainment of a bloodthirsty crowd, is more Hollywood than history. While movies and popular culture often depict every match as a life-or-death struggle, the reality was far more nuanced and complex. In truth, most gladiatorial contests didn't end in death. Gladiators were highly trained professionals, and their owners saw them as valuable investments rather than disposable pawns. The cost of training, feeding, and housing a gladiator was significant, so it made little sense to risk losing them in every match. Owners spent fortunes on their fighters, enrolling them in specialized schools where they learned not just combat skills, but also discipline and showmanship. Keeping these athletes alive made economic sense, as a skilled gladiator could bring fame and fortune to their owner over many years. Referees, known as summa rudis, played a crucial role in the arena. They closely monitored every bout, ensuring the rules were followed and often stepping in to stop a fight before a fatal blow could be delivered. Their presence helped maintain order and fairness in the games. The final decision to spare or kill a defeated gladiator usually rested with the editor, the official in charge of the games. Contrary to popular belief, it was not always the emperor or the whims of the crowd that determined a gladiator's fate, but rather the editor's judgment. If a gladiator fought bravely and put on a good show, he was often granted missio, mercy and release from the fight. This act of clemency was a mark of respect for skill and courage, and it allowed the gladiator to fight another day. Surrendering by raising a finger was a common plea for mercy, signaling to the officials and the crowd that the gladiator wished to yield. The audience could also express their wishes, sometimes waving handkerchiefs to indicate mercy, or calling for the fight to end. While death was always a risk and part of the spectacle's appeal, survival was actually common. Skilled gladiators could build long, celebrated careers, earning fame, rewards, and even their freedom after years of successful combat. Understanding these realities changes our view of gladiators. They were not simply victims of bloodlust, but professional athletes, respected, trained, and admired for their prowess and endurance in the arena. Gladiatorial games began as solemn funeral rites, not mass entertainment. The first recorded combat in 264 BC honored a deceased noble, with bloodshed meant to appease the spirits. These early contests were private, religious, and small-scale, often involving prisoners of war as sacrificial fighters. As Rome expanded, ambitious politicians transformed these rituals into public spectacles to win favor with the masses. Julius Caesar's lavish games set new standards, prompting laws to limit the number of gladiators. The games evolved into tools of political power, bred in circuses to distract and control the populace. The Colosseum became the ultimate symbol of this shift, a permanent arena for state-sponsored spectacle. Most gladiators were slaves or prisoners of war, forced into the arena with little choice. Captured in distant lands or born into servitude, these men, and sometimes even women, were stripped of their freedom and thrust into a world where survival depended on strength, skill, and luck. The roar of the crowd was often the last thing they heard before battle began. Criminals sentenced ad ludos could fight for a slim chance at survival, unlike those condemned to die by beasts. The most unfortunate faced damnatio ad bestias, execution by wild animals, a spectacle designed to terrify and entertain. For those sent to the games, the arena offered a brutal but not impossible path to redemption. Gladiator schools were prisons, but for a few the arena was a desperate opportunity. Inside the ludus, harsh discipline and relentless training shaped men into fighters. Some found camaraderie among fellow gladiators, forging bonds in the face of constant danger. A small group, the octorati, were free-born citizens who volunteered, often out of debt or a thirst for fame. These men signed contracts, willingly giving up their legal rights and social standing for a chance at fortune or to escape crushing debts. Their decision shocked Roman society, blurring the lines between honor and disgrace. By signing up, they surrendered their rights and became social outcasts. But the rewards could be great: prize money, fame, and adoration. Victorious gladiators were celebrated like heroes, their names chanted by thousands. Some even won their freedom, becoming legends in their own time. For some, the risk was worth the chance at glory. The arena was a stage where the lowest could rise to greatness, if only for a fleeting moment. Every fight was a gamble, with life, death, and honor hanging in the balance. Gladiators were a complex mix: slaves, criminals, and risk-takers, all united by the brutal world of the arena. They came from every corner of the empire, each with their own story, their own reasons for fighting, and their own hopes for the future. Their stories reveal a society obsessed with status, spectacle, and the possibility of redemption through violence. The games were more than entertainment. They were a reflection of Roman values, where courage and endurance were tested before the eyes of thousands. The choice to fight, whether forced or voluntary, added layers to their identity. Each gladiator carried the weight of expectation, fear, and hope, stepping into the arena as both victim and potential victor. In the end, the arena was a place of both punishment and possibility, a crucible where destinies were forged and where the echoes of battle still linger in the stones today. Life in a gladiator school was harsh, part prison, part barracks. The lanista ruled with absolute authority, enforcing strict discipline and punishing any defiance. Gladiators lived in cramped cells, their days filled with relentless training and rigid routines. Newcomers endured the toughest treatment while veterans earned better food and respect. Despite the brutality, a sense of brotherhood, familia gladiatoria, often formed among the fighters. They trained, ate, and lived together, forging bonds even as they faced the possibility of fighting each other. The psychological strain was immense, camaraderie mixed with the ever-present threat of death. Diets were high in carbs to build muscle and fat, and medical care was prioritized to keep fighters in shape. Even famed physician Galen learned his craft patching up gladiators. The ludus was a crucible, forging men into living weapons for the arena. Gladiator training was relentless and methodical. Recruits drilled with heavy wooden weapons, building strength and stamina against the palace. Once basics were mastered, each fighter specialized. Retiarius with net and trident, Secutor with heavy armor, and more. Specialization was assigned, not chosen, based on physique and temperament. Training focused on both body and mind. Fighters learned to face death without fear and to perform bravely for the crowd. Trainers, often retired gladiators, pushed recruits to their limits with brutal sparring and strict discipline. Practice bouts with blunted weapons honed real combat skills. Every detail, from diet to drills, was controlled to create the ultimate showman warrior. The result, a fighter ready to face the Colosseum's deadly stage. A day at the games was a marathon of spectacle, not just gladiator duels. Festivities began with a grand procession, showcasing fighters and the sponsors' wealth. Mornings featured wild animal hunts, lions, tigers, and more, demonstrating Rome's power over nature. Midday brought public executions, often staged as gruesome mythological reenactments. The most brutal criminals thrown to starved beasts in damnatio ad bestias. Only in the afternoon did the main event begin, carefully matched gladiator contests, the true heart of the games. Fights pitted strength against speed, skill against courage, captivating the crowd. The games were a blend of violence, theater, and social control. The Colosseum's atmosphere was electric, tens of thousands united in anticipation and excitement. The roar of the crowd echoed off ancient stone, a living sea of faces hungry for spectacle. For many Romans, attending the games was more than entertainment, it was a communal ritual, a chance to feel the pulse of the empire itself. The crowd's cheers and jeers could sway a fight, making them active participants in the drama. Their voices rose in a deafening chorus, urging on their favorites or demanding blood. The energy was contagious, binding strangers together in a shared emotional experience. Audiences craved violence, but also admired skill and bravery, developing fierce loyalties to favorite fighters. Some fans followed the careers of gladiators as closely as we follow sports stars today, memorizing their victories and defeats. Successful gladiators became celebrities, their names and images celebrated across Rome. Graffiti, mosaics, and even small statues honored their feats, and children might pretend to be their favorite champions in the streets. Even as slaves or outcasts, the best fighters achieved fame rivaling modern athletes. Their faces appeared on oil lamps and wall paintings, and their stories were told in taverns and marketplaces. Gladiators embodied Roman virtues, courage, endurance, and excellence, while also symbolizing society's darker appetites. They were both admired and pitied, living paradoxes who inspired awe and fear. When a fight ended, the crowd signaled for mercy or death, influencing the editor's final decision. The fate of a defeated gladiator often hung on the whim of the masses, making every gesture in the stands a matter of life or death. A raised finger could mean a plea for life, a thumbs down, a call for death. These gestures became iconic, a silent language understood by all who gathered in the arena. The crowd's will was powerful, ignoring it was politically risky. Emperors and officials knew that public opinion in the Colosseum could shape their reputations or even threaten their rule. Hero worship and bloodlust coexisted, making the games a complex social phenomenon. The same people who cheered for mercy could, moments later, demand a brutal end. The arena was where Rome's values and vices collided in public view, a stage for both the glory and the darkness of the empire's soul. The arena wasn't just for men. Female gladiators, or gladiatrices, also fought, though rarely. Ancient sources mention women in the arena, sometimes as a scandal, sometimes as a novelty. Inscriptions and art confirm their existence, with some even winning freedom after honorable draws. Their presence was controversial, leading to an official ban in 200 AD to reinforce traditional gender roles. Rome's appetite for the exotic extended to animal hunts, which grew ever more elaborate. Thousands of animals, lions, elephants, hippos, were slaughtered, devastating wildlife across the empire. The logistics were staggering. Ships built for animal transport, entire species hunted to extinction. These spectacles showcased Rome's dominance over nature, but at a tremendous environmental cost. The games were as much about power and spectacle as they were about combat. The gladiatorial games faded slowly, pressured by Christian opposition and economic decline. The last combat in Rome was in the early 5th century. The Colosseum stones were repurposed, its history fading. Yet, the gladiator endures in our imagination. Through films, TV, and games, the lone fighter remains iconic. Modern sports echo the ancient arena, massive stadiums, roaring crowds, and hero worship. While today's contests aren't deadly, the psychological dynamics are strikingly similar. The Colosseum was the blueprint for modern sports arenas, public spaces for mass entertainment. Gladiators were more than killers. They were symbols of courage, survival, and the complexities of Roman society. Their legacy reminds us of humanity's enduring fascination with violence, spectacle, and the quest for glory.